All right, so the first question, determine if the graph is a function, then identify the domain and range. What we want to look for to determine if something is a function is we're looking from left to right. Do you have any repeating x values? And so it also has to pass the vertical line test. This one, if I go to this x, I only have one y value. If I scoot over, I only have one y value. If I scoot over, I only have one y value. If I scoot over, I only have one y value. This is a function. Basically, anything that looks like a u, a v, a line, all of those are functions. All of those are functions. Things that are not functions would be a graph that looks like a C. That is not a function. So anything that looks like a U, a V, a line, those are functions. Yes, it is a function. The domain goes with X, range goes with Y. So we're looking how far left does my graph go? And you have to have the smaller number on the left for both of them every time. And so to the left, it looks like I start at -2. So I start at -2. And there's a closed circle there, so I need a bracket. And then along the x value, when do I stop? Well, my graph kind of stops right here-ish, but that arrow tells me it's going to keep going. So as it keeps going, I could continue on. So it's infinity. And infinity always gets parentheses. Bro, we are working on this. Why do you not have it? The range, how far low can I go? How far down? So this one has a definite bottom. It starts at -4. Remember, the smaller number has to be on the left. And I have a closed circle, so I will put a bracket. How far up do I go? Well, it kind of stops here, but that arrow says it's going to keep going. So I keep going up to infinity. We have a question just like this on the test. The next question, again, this is directly off of your test. It says if 3t minus 7 equals 5t, then 6t equals, and this was a question that was, you had a question like this on your test review. So we have to do this in two parts. We have to first do this, second do this. First, we have to solve for t. To solve for t, we need to get t all by itself. For this one, we have a t on both sides. So you look for the bigger one. I have a 3 and I have a 5. 5 is bigger. So we're going to bring the 3 over. So we're going to subtract 3t. 7 comes down, the -7 comes down. 5 minus 3, 2t. Very good. And last step, I'm multiplying by 2, so I need to divide by 2. Just like this warm-up, when you do your test, on your test, you're going to end up with a fraction. Don't freak out. Your answer is going to work out nicely, but you are going to get a fraction. So bear with me. We see that t is equal to -7 over 2. I know you've got a calculator. Do not type that in. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to plug it in for 6t. So we just did step 1. Now we're going to do step 2. Step 2 is 6 times t. Well, t is -7 over 2. When you multiply a whole number by a fraction, always check to see if you can reduce. It will make it easier for you. For this one, I see that 6 and 2, that could reduce. How many times does 2 go into 6? 3 times. So the 6 turns into a 3. So now I just have 3 times -7. What is that? -21. Very good. Again, on your test, it will be something similar, and this is an open-ended question. First, solve for t or whatever the variables is, solve for x. Then plug it in. When you plug it in, your answer will end up as a nice whole number. All right, moving on. The next thing is graphing. So you have lots of graphing on your test, whether it is looking at a graph and finding the equation, or having an equation and graphing it, or using graph to figure out the answer to a system. You have to know how to graph. And so we're going to remind ourselves that to graph, you need two things. You need a slope and you need a y-intercept. Your slope goes with the x part and your y-intercept is after. First, though, you have to first do the y-intercept and second you do the slope. So you have to go plot your y. You have to go plot along the y, then you do your slope. So for the first one, the y-intercept is 5. So I go up to 5 and I put a point. The slope is negative, and there's not a number there. So it means it's -1. It's not a fraction, so it's -1/1. So you go down 1/1 and you put a point, you could put more points. We're going to use that to help us graph this line. When you graph a line, remember that you're going to connect the dots, and I have protractors. So when you turn this in, if you want to grab a protractor, because you will have to graph, and you put arrows on both ends. Braylon, do you need a pencil? I have some in the bucket at the front. Yes. Okay, so the slope. Slope is always rise over run. So rise, if it's positive, you go up. If it's negative, you go down. And run is always to the right all day. So what I did first was I plot my point at 5, and then it says go down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1. And then I use symmetry to get the other half. So I know that if it continued on this way, that to get this side, I would have to go up 1/1. Does that make sense? Okay. For the next one, it looks like my y-intercept is at -5. So I'm going to go put a point at -5. For this slope, it's positive and it says 2/3. So that means I'm going to go up 2 and then to the right 3. I'm going to connect the dots. And I use symmetry to go the other direction, down 2 and left 3. The solution that we're doing all day, the solution is the point of intersection. The solution is a coordinate. It's an x, y. The solution is a point. So for this one, what is that point of intersection? So close. So close. Yeah, it's 6. So it goes +6 and then down 1. So -1. So close. So the solution, there's a spot on your test all over the place and it says solution. I want you to tell me where those two lines intersect. We have one more problem that we're going to do together, and then we're going to start our tests. This one says, graph the inequalities to find the solution set. Make sure to use the symbol to determine if the lines are solid dashed or if you shade above and below, or I guess it's and. I wrote it exactly like that on the test. So I gave you a hint that you need to make sure to check if you're solid or dashed, do you shade above or below? When I look at the top inequality, that one is a greater than symbol and there is the line underneath. So since there's a line underneath, it's going to be solid. And it says greater than, so I shade above. The bottom one, it will be dashed and I shade below. The top one, you graph them similar to a line. The top one, I have to go do the y-intercept, which is at -1. The slope is 3, so that's up 3/1. And it's a solid line, so I'll make a solid line. And then I need to shade above. So this one is kind of a tilted line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out thinking, okay, if I can start from here. From here, if I shade above, I'm going to shade like this. Well, then I need to tilt my line so that it looks the same. So my line tilts like that, pretty steep. So I need to shade on this side. So do that visually if you need to. Do it visually if you need to. Put your little arms out. You can do it kind of like this. I would shade above and then I'm kind of tilting. Whatever you need to do so that you get the right answer on your test. So shading above. It's going to look like that. So I know that that kind of looks like it's on the left. You got to be careful because this one's really steep. The next one, I need to plot my y-intercept and it's at 3. So I go to 3 and I put a point. This one, the slope is -1/2. So I'm going to go down 1 and then to the right 2. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side using symmetry. And then this one is going to be a dashed line. So I put a dashed line. I still need arrows, even though it's a dashed line. This one shades below. And again, you can kind of visually put your little arms out. I'm going to shade below. And then this one tilts so that you can kind of visually see where that one is going to shade. And then, so the overlapping shaded region is where all of the answers are. That is my solution. It's this over here. There are also questions on your test where I give you a graph of a system of inequalities and I ask you what is part of the solution. And I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to give you some points along a dashed line. Those are not part of the solution. I'm going to give you some points along the solid line. The solid line that borders the yellow part, those work. Those are part of your solution. But this solid line over here, it's not part of the solution set because it's not bordering that yellow part. So I will probably give you a point over here. You would say no. And then I'll probably give you a point over here. That one will work. And of course, anything that's in the shaded part, that works too. Don't try and do those like with your mind. Plot the points. Plot the points, and then on your answer choices, either say yes or no. Check them off, yes or no, if they work or if they don't work. All right, that is it. As a quick, fast review, make sure you've got your name on it. Should be an easy 100. All you had to do was follow along. So turn that in along with your test review.